Hi, I'm Christine Fakrus, and we're about to embark on a journey that will focus on state power and limits. Every country has its own state. State is any politically organized community living under a single system of a government. However, state power is divided into two, namely, structuring state power and limiting state power. So let's start with the etymological meaning of state. State comes from the Latin word status, which means a condition of a country. State is the most powerful and universal out of all social institutions. Also, it comes into existence out of the basic needs of life. Aristotle once said that man is a social animal and by nature, he is a political being. The elements of the state is divided into two, namely the physical and the political basis. In physical basis, state requires population and territory, while in political, government and sovereignty must be needed. A state is considered to be a legitimate state if it follows three conditions. First, the institution of the state must be justified. Second, the state should be well structured. And lastly, the state should be observed the limits of its political power. There are theories that will support if a state is justified or not. Divine right theory, are also known as absolutism, claims that the state is justified if a ruler is appointed by God. Social contract theory claims that a state is justified if it is run by a government that has a primary functions. It is expressed in the form of contract. Next is the consequentialist justification of the state, which claims that the state is justified if it is only run by a government that increases the overall happiness of its constituents. Let's now talk about the state power forms and limits. In this part, we will cover the structuring state power and the limiting state power. According to Aristotle, various forms of government falls into two considerations. First is the number of rulers and the next is whether the rulers rule to advance their personal or common interest. The limits of a state power are as follows. The area of individual freedom, in which John Stuart Mill states that a person's freedom is limited only if the exercise of freedom will bring persons harm to another person. To sum it up, three dimensions of a legitimized state power are justification, structure, and limits.
Hi guys, I'm Ken Gertiza, and I'm here to discuss about philosophy. Well, philosophy is the study about the nature of knowledge and reality, and it has many branches, and one of these is political philosophy. Under political philosophy, we're going to focus on limiting state power, specifically sphere. On economy, there are two known founders under the sphere on economy. And now, let's go to John Locke and Adam Smith's view on economics. According to John Locke, humans are endowed with nature rights and rights to life, liberty and property, and the right to punish offenders of the previous rights. While Adam Smith justifies its ulterior grounds by appealing to its beneficial consequences. Smith's argument, called the invisible hand argument, and Adam Smith is the founder capitalist theory and he views value as a product of labor and thus operated under the labor theory of value, which was basically used by all economists until the labor theory of value became central to Marxism. And on the other hand, socialism has come to arise with Karl Marx's theory that presents historical materialism, exploitation, and alienation. Marx's concept to socialism follows from his concept of man. It should be clear by now that according to his concept, socialism is not a society of regimented, automatized individuals, regardless of whether there is equality of income or not, and regardless of whether they are well fed and well dressed. Here's a quick recap about all the terms and ideologies that we talk about in our discussion. First, we dug into Aristotle's classification of the various forms of government, which she based on two considerations, specifically the number of rulers and whether the rulers rule to advance their personal interests or the common interest or good of all citizens of their states. Second, we talk about the democracy and its three functions: executive, legislative, and judiciary. We also explained why Socrates hated democracy and the limits of state power and divided into the area of individual freedom that was supported by John Stuart Mill's principle called the Liberty Principle. Mill stated three regions of absolute human liberty: region of consciousness, region of taste and pursuits, and region of forming associations. The area of economic freedom that is supported by John Locke's and Adam Smith's ideology on capitalism and Karl Marx's ideology on socialism. Once again, I'm King Gertiza, and I hope that you clearly understood all the terms and ideologies that we discussed.
Good day everyone, I'm Noriana de los Reyes.
And I'm Angeline Castrillero,
And we're here to discuss the reason why Socrates hated democracy.
Democracy is one of the most successful form of government that we know this century. Despite the high value on Western places on democracy, it wasn't always the case. One of the greatest minds in history, Socrates, who was described by Plato in his book of the Republic, he displayed a huge pessimism towards the ideology on democracy.
An example given by Socrates to see the flaws of democracy is by comparing society to a ship. If you were heading out on a journey by sea, ask Socrates, who would you ideally want to decide who will be in charge of the vessel? Just anyone or people educated in the rules and demands of seafaring? The latter, of course, says Adeimantus. So why then, responds Socrates, do we keep thinking that any old person should be fit to judge who should be a ruler of a country?
Therefore, Socrates stated that the process of voting for a new ruler of a society must be taught systematically to people.
Moreover, it shouldn't be earned through birthright, and letting the citizenry vote without an education is as irresponsible as putting them in charge of a trireme sailing Samos in a storm. Once again, I'm Noriana de los Reyes.
And I'm Angeline Castrillero.
Thank you for listening, and we will continue our journey to the inquiry of the world.
Life.